Evening and welcome to the University of Grace, hosted by Grace Christian Family Center. Tonight's speaker is Scott Goss, presenting Creation versus Evolution.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us again at the University of Grace. I hope you're enjoying the lessons. I hope you're keeping up and maintaining that A average. And we've got a great lesson tonight. It is something that many people are interested in. It's been a topic of argumentation. It's been a topic of confusion. And hopefully tonight this will clear up some of that for you and all of us. So tonight, this is what... There we go. Got it. This is what you will learn, the slide says. So, very emphatic. The history of evolution theory. Now, to make that phrase a little bit briefer, I'm going to take some license and call it ET. We're just going to call it ET. It stands for the theory of evolution, or a shorter form is evolution theory. In most literature, it's called the theory of evolution, but we're going to call it ET because I'm going to say it a lot of times tonight. We're going to talk about the history of it. We're going to talk about the problems that ET has, and it's got a lot of problems. We're going to talk about what the Bible says about the creation events and how a Christian can believe both science and the Bible. So, what is all the fuss about? There is no agreement among creationists about creation. And there is no agreement among evolutionists about evolution. And there is no agreement among Christians about the origins of the universe and earth and mankind. There's a lot of ideas out there. We don't have a lot of agreement. Christians are not commanded by God to understand these things. And that's good news, because the Bible doesn't give us all the details that are needed to form a theory of creation. Neither God's special revelation, which is the Bible, or His general revelation, which we call the book of nature, provide us with all the answers that we need. But we do have some clues. Some Christians claim that the earth is 6,000 years old and that the creation took only 144 hours. And they calculate that by 6 24-hour day periods. While it's possible that this is true, that is not what nature is giving us. That's not the information that nature is giving us. Biblical genealogies are telescoped. What this means is that not every generation is listed in every genealogy. We know this by comparing multiple genealogies through the Bible. We can see that there are generations that are left out. This doesn't mean that it's inaccurate. It's just the way that they recorded them and presented them to us. Also, in the book of Genesis, we have this word called yom, which is translated day. And this has caused a lot of confusion in the creation story, because when we read day 1, day 2, day 3, the thing that comes to mind is a 24-hour day. But remember, the Bible was written in Hebrew, and Hebrew has a very limited vocabulary, and it's been translated into English. So we're reading an ancient language that has been translated into English. And the word yom can mean a 24-hour day. It can also mean the daytime part of the day, the day. And it can also mean a long period of time. We use the phrase, back in my grandfather's day. Well, we're not talking about 24 hours or the daytime period. We're talking about a undefined period of time, really. So that can be part of the confusion that comes into this 6,000-year earth and this 144-hour creation period. But let's look into it a little bit further and see what we can find. The problem is, and this is a big problem, when people hear us say that the earth is 6,000 years old and the creation took 144 hours, and then they look at the book of nature And that does not agree with what we're telling them. So, it causes people to disbelieve the Bible account. Now, I'm definitely one that believes the Bible is inerrant. It has no mistakes. It has no errors. It was God-inspired, God-breathed. But maybe we're misunderstanding it. There's been a history of misunderstanding the Bible. I guess I'm going to have to do this to get this to work. There we go. This is the Andromeda Galaxy. It's the farthest naked eye object that you can see, which means without any magnification, on a dark night, you can go out here in Tomball, Texas, and look up there between August and February, and you can see the Andromeda Galaxy if you know where to look and the sky is dark enough. We have a very good idea that this is 2.5 million light years away from the Earth. We have a very good idea of the speed of light, and that is 670 million miles per hour. So what that means is when you go out in your backyard and you look up and you see the Andromeda Galaxy, you're seeing light that left there 2.5 million years ago. That light left there that long ago. It's so far away, it took that long for the light to get here, even though the light is going 670 million miles per hour. That seems to tell us that the stars in the Andromeda Galaxy have been there at least 2.5 million years. And there are other clues that we get about the universe that tell us that the universe has been expanding for 13 billion years. So it appears from nature that the universe is at least over 13 billion years old. That's what the observations tell us. The record of nature appears to tell us that the earth is old, the universe is older, so maybe that we have some misunderstanding about the book of Genesis. That should not be surprising because the Bible has been misunderstood many times. Just think about the sayings of Jesus and how misunderstood he was. What did he say? Destroy this temple and in 3 days I will raise it up. Well, they didn't know that he was talking about his body. They thought he was talking about the building that was right there. What about when he said, unless you eat my flesh and drink my blood, you have no part with me? That's been a big problem for a lot of people. That was a problem for those that heard Jesus speaking that day. So there is confusion in our understanding of the Bible. It doesn't mean the Bible's wrong. It means we are misunderstanding. Well, I'm having problems with the clicker tonight, y'all. There we go. Many consider Galilei the father of modern science. But in the early 1600s, he was not popular with the church. After he built his first telescope, he discovered that the moon has craters, the sun has spots, Venus has phases, and there are 4 moons circling the planet Jupiter. This conflicted with Catholic Church doctrine, and they called him in and they said, you must recant. And he did recant, but they still confined him to house arrest for the rest of his life. So this man was reading the book of nature. He told people what it said. It did not agree with what church leaders thought it should say, and Galileo paid a price of being imprisoned for the rest of his life. Galileo called nature God's second book. Christians have a history of misinterpreting the Bible, but the Bible has never been wrong. It's impossible to come to a scientific understanding of creation by reading the Bible, because the Bible is not a science book. It's not trying to give us the scientific details. The Bible is bringing us a story of how our Creator relates to us and how we should relate to Him. The Bible tells us who created and why it's important, but it doesn't tell us when it happened or how it happened. So, this lesson is entitled Creation versus Evolution, but a lot of people have made this fight into Christianity versus atheism, or the Bible versus science. But really the correct terminology would be creationism versus naturalism. And we're going to define these terms in just a minute. ET, evolution theory, is heavily promoted in print media, television, radio, movies, national parks, museums, science centers, zoos, and even on breakfast cereal boxes. How can so many educated people be wrong about ET? Are they all lying to us on purpose? ET is discussed in public. How could it be a deception? Are all the scientists and teachers and textbooks and famous people wrong about evolution? Don't scientists have open minds to observe their testing and to adjust their beliefs accordingly? Why would scientists tell us that evolution is true if it's not proven? I hope you're asking yourself these questions. Oh boy, there we go. I'm going to be playing with this all night, so just get used to it, apparently. As long as people insist on denying that there is a creator God, there's no way we're going to be able to convince them that he exists. Self-deception is the worst kind of deception. But now, evolution theory has gone beyond self-deception and is being promoted in the public sector. People are being pressured from all sides to pledge allegiance to ET. Yet, ET does not even have a convincing scientific argument. That's shocking, isn't it? But we're going to show you tonight that it's true. True science is observable, testable, repeatable, and falsifiable, meaning it can be disproven. And always looking for more truth, regardless of the truth that the science thinks it already knows. Therefore, there are no absolutes in true science. That means once there's a conclusion made, it's not an absolute conclusion because it can be overturned in the future with more evidence. Both ET and creationism require beliefs about the past that can never be observed, can never be repeated, can't be tested, can't be falsified. So neither evolution nor creationism is a science. It's a belief. It's a belief system. So, regarding the creation of all things, we're really left with just two choices. Either God created everything in the universe and all life by intervening in natural processes, such as evolution theory. But if God intervenes in evolution, it's not natural. It's miraculous, and we call it a miracle. So that could have happened. Or God could have miraculously created everything using no natural processes. He could have just said the word, and there it was. Poof, there it is. Either way, God created miraculously, and this is certain. Science does not have a true theory for how everything came to be, or how life arose, or how mankind came to be. Yet the Bible tells us in simple language that God caused it all to happen. We may not know the mechanisms, but we know that God was the cause. Natural processes, as science currently understands them, could never create all the diverse life that we see today. Christians should accept God's first book, the Bible, as well as learn from his second book, nature. Remember, Jesus did not say, "By this all men will know that you are my disciples if you have the correct view of the creation." He said, if you have love one for another. So even if we disagree about this topic, let's always keep love as number one between us. So here we go. Sorry about this. It's a little challenging. Here we go. We're going back to science class. Bear with me a few minutes. We're going to go through some scientific definitions because this is going to make everything a lot easier as we get more into the theory of evolution. Christians are not anti-science. Christians are pro-science because science is always looking for the truth, and Christians want to know the truth, right? The book of Proverbs says, "Buy the truth and do not sell it." So there's a cost for the truth. The disciples asked Jesus, "Why are you telling them in parables? Why don't you tell them plainly?" Well, there's a cost for finding the truth. And basically what Jesus said is those that really want to know the truth are going to find it. And those that are just casually passing by are not going to hear the truth. So science in its pure form is seeking the truth. All scientists, when they're performing science, are naturalists, meaning they only pay attention to natural laws, natural effects. Scientists do not pay attention to anything supernatural. It's outside of the realm of science. Science has to be able to test it, to repeat it, to prove it or disprove it. And of course, God is beyond the realm of science, so God is not a criteria that science can even comment on. Science does not command commitment to atheism, which is the belief that there is no God, but science does not permit commitment to the Bible. So the science is in a class by itself. It's only considering nature and natural laws and natural phenomenon. Here's some of the many famous Christian scientists. Christians can believe the Bible, they can believe science. Here we got Francis Bacon, gave us the scientific method. Gregor Mendel gave us genetics and heredity. Charles Babbage gave us the computer way back. And Isaac Newton gave us the laws of motion and gravity. And while he was at it, he just invented the calculus. Many Christians used to believe that the earth was the center of the universe and that animals could not go extinct. We know today that these two views are false, as well as other false ideas that Christians have held through the years. Misunderstandings arise when we read the Hebrew Scriptures in English and also when we're taught incorrectly when we're younger. And these things that we're taught as children tend to go with us throughout the rest of our life. And if we're not taught the correct way, we can be thinking incorrectly for many years. If the Bible doesn't give us the details of how the creation worked, then it must not be of great importance for us to know. We can try to theorize it, we can try to understand it, but for what purpose? It does not change the things that are clearly stated in the Bible, such as God created man in His image, God has certain expectations from man, and therefore man is accountable to God. That is of utmost importance. Why? Okay, 4 slides of definitions. Stay with me. We're going to go through them real quickly. Here are some scientific terms that will help us understand the debate about creationism and naturalism. A scientific theory is an attempt to explain how a natural occurrence works. A scientific fact is an observation that has been confirmed repeatedly and is accepted as true, although its truth is never final. And a scientific law is a statement that describes an observable occurrence in nature and that appears to always be true. So let's take these 3 and let's put them in a real-world example concerning gravity. We have a theory of gravity, we have gravity as a scientific fact, and we have the law of gravity. Let's see how that works. The theory of gravity attempts to explain how gravity works, but we still don't know how gravity works. It's just a theory. We accept that gravity exists as a scientific fact because we all experience it. We've experienced it our entire lives, and we've never, as far as I know, none of you have, not experienced gravity. We do have some humans that have experienced no gravity, but for the most part, we all always experience gravity. And then the law of gravity is a mathematical equation that shows the relationship between mass and distance and gravitational force. So we've got a theory, we've got a fact, and we've got a law. Settled science is a misnomer. It's an impossibility. By definition, science can never be settled. Science never leads to certainty. Science is always looking for more information, even though it thinks it knows all the information that it needs to know. Science is an inquiry. It's a tool. It's seeking to understand more. Science cannot tell you how to live your life, how to make decisions. It cannot tell you what's right and wrong. It's a tool to find more truth. Creationism is the belief that God created everything supernaturally. Naturalism would be the opposite of creationism. It says that only natural processes occurred to create the universe and earth and mankind. So those two are opposites. Evolution by itself is a very benign term. It simply means change over time. I've evolved since I got up this morning. I'm dressed differently. I'm a little smarter than I was this morning. Evolution just simply means it's changed over a period of time. A species, also known as species, it's correct to say it either way, is a group of closely related organisms that are similar to each other and are capable of interbreeding and producing fertile offspring. Darwinism is the doctrine that gradual change has led from one species in the beginning to become all the species that we see in the world today through the process of natural selection. Natural selection says that nature selects the fittest organisms to survive, and those that are not as fit die. That's very simple. We all understand that. And then finally, our last term that we're going to define, naturalistic evolution. That's the same as what we've been talking about, ET, the theory of evolution, atheistic evolution, or simply evolution. But when somebody says, do you believe in evolution? You've got to know what kind of evolution they're talking about. We all evolve. We all change over time. Of course, we're changing. I've changed my clothes. I've evolved. But when it's talking about evolution as far as the natural world, it's really better to call it naturalistic evolution, because that pinpoints that what we're talking about is only natural things have happened to bring the world into the condition that it's in today. ET is called a theory, but it's never been proven, it's never been tested, and it's never been observed. Can you believe that? It's nowhere close to having the support of being a scientific fact or being a scientific law. But the word theory is conveniently being dropped from a lot of the literature. So now it's just called evolution instead of the theory of evolution. ET is not even a good hypothesis, which is the precursor to theory, because a hypothesis can be tested and evolution theory cannot be tested. Here's some good scientific questions that science can never answer. Why is there something rather than nothing? Why is there a universe? Where did the universe come from? And all the laws of physics that control all the processes that we see in the universe. How did life arise? And where did our consciousness come from? Science cannot answer these questions. Let's look at the history of ET and find out where it came from and how it got to where it is today. ET did not begin as a replacement for God, but it's been hijacked. And atheists and people that don't believe in God and don't believe in the Bible have taken it as an alternative to the Bible. They say it's the thinking man's answer to the unbelievable story that we read about in the Bible. But if the first chapter of the Bible is a myth, why read any more of the Bible? If the Bible cannot be trusted with what happened in the past, why listen to what it says about the future? Darwin published this book on the origin of species in 1859. He had taken a 5-year voyage around the world, and when he landed in the Galapagos Islands, he saw a unique set of creatures that had never been seen in other parts of the world. Specifically, some finches. Do you see the finches there on the cover of the book? He saw that these finches in the Galapagos Islands had very long, narrow beaks, and that enabled them to eat seeds out of the rock crevices. Those that had the long, narrow beaks survived. Those that did not died. This caused Darwin to begin to doubt the fixity of species, meaning he began to wonder if an animal could change from one animal to another over a period of time. He wondered if it could evolve into another type of creature. What Darwin observed, though, was not evolution. He observes survival of the fittest, which means that nature selects the most fit animals to thrive in a certain environment. Now, in another environment, those finches in the Galapagos Islands may not have been as hardy and may not have survived as well. But in their environment, with the seeds in the cracks of the rocks, they were able to grab the seeds out of there. In that environment, those particular finches seemed to thrive. But that is not evolution. Previous to his voyage, Darwin was in Christian seminary, but he dropped out, and then he attended medical school, and then he dropped out again. He later became an agnostic who says that I can't tell what's true. But this is a sad quote from Darwin. He said, "I do not believe in the Bible as a divine revelation, and therefore not in Jesus Christ as the Son of God." So let's talk a little bit more about this thing that Darwin got started called evolution. If you can see the chart there, on the right, on the left, we've got macroevolution. On the right, we've got microevolution. In the strictest sense, we know that evolution does occur within a species because a black dog and a white dog can produce a brown dog. So that's a change that happened over a period of time. But that's not the kind of evolution that's necessary to create all the different forms of life in the world. We call that variation within a kind. But E.T. states that over a long period of time and with many small changes and millions of years, that a dog can become another animal. That's never been observed, and there is no proof ever found for it. There's no proof of it. So they take an observable phenomenon, which is a white dog and a black dog produce a brown dog, and they stretch that out to say if that happened long enough and with enough changes and enough time, that dog could become another animal. Macroevolution has never been observed. It's never been made in the lab. It's never been seen in the fossil record. No matter how many times they've attempted to find it or make it, it has never happened. So it doesn't qualify as a scientific fact or theory, yet it's treated as truth. So on the right, you've got microevolution where a dog can produce another color of dog. But on the left, you've got a little blob that grows into a fish, that grows into a reptile, that grows into a rodent, that grows into a monkey, and give them enough time and they're going to, maybe he's going to become a man, right? All right, so here we go. This is a good list of all the proofs of ET. Unfortunately, they've all been canceled out. But let's talk about a few of them. Dinosaurs. We know that dinosaurs existed. Why are they not in the Bible? Because they happened before man. They happened in the story before man. They went extinct before man. And they're not part of God's salvation story. The Bible doesn't give us all the animals that have ever existed. In fact, most of the animals that have ever lived, those types have all gone extinct. Out of all the animals that have ever lived, very few of them are alive today. Very few types of them are alive today. Most of the types of animals that we find in the fossil record don't exist anymore. They've all gone extinct. So, dinosaurs are one of those. Peppered moths. Back in the Middle Ages in Great Britain, they were burning coal, and the black peppered moth tended to survive better than the white peppered moth because there was black soot on a lot of surfaces. But when they began to stop burning the coal and the white and the black soot went away, then the white peppered moths came back. Well, that's not evolution. That's survival of the fittest again. The ones that are black are going to blend in with the soot, and the whites are going to stick out and they're going to be killed and captured and destroyed. So, peppered moths, not a good thing. Vestigial organs. People used to think that the tonsils and the appendix and the coccyx, which is your tailbone, indicated that we used to be part of some other animal family. Well, now science has learned that all of those parts of the human body and other things that are considered vestigial organs serve a purpose. So our knowledge has increased and we've realized that these organs are important. Embryological development. Some people look at an embryo developing and they see that as an organism going through all the different stages of evolution. That's just ridiculous. It's not true. Homologous structures. Some people used to believe that the wings on a bird were analogous to the fingers on the hand. Well, that's been disproven also. The hominids are the upright walking creatures that seem to be part man and part monkey, and we're going to talk about those later. The biochemistry found in all different life forms is amazingly similar. Well, that's to be understood. We're all drinking water, we're all breathing air, whether we're plants or animals. Our chemistry is the same because we're all living in the same chemical environment. That is not a proof of ET. Molecular biology, paleontology, or other topics, we're not going to talk about those, but these are other places where there was thought at one time to be proof of ET, but it's been debunked. So this is one that everybody likes. The missing link. This is the link between man and animal. ET has been on a quest for 160 years, over 160 years, to find the missing link, the monkey man, the one that is the trans animal between the ape and the human. In all of the following discoveries we're going to talk about here, there were embellishments made to the original discovery. Typically, the things that are found are skull bones and teeth, because these are some of the thickest, hardest parts of the skeleton. So most of the skeleton remains that are found are a skull or teeth. So whenever you see pictures, they've added human hair, human eyes, big noses, big lips, spears, clubs, tools, clothes, families, names, and put them in a cave with a drawing on the wall. And all of that's made up. It's all made up. It's been created to bolster the narrative of ET. However, none of those details can be discovered from a tooth or a jawbone or a skull cap. Many of these hoaxes still remain in textbooks, on science charts, and of course, it's on the internet. All right, in 1857, a skull was found near Neander Valley in Germany. They called it Neanderthal Man. Over 300 Neanderthal specimens have been found scattered around the world. This group of people was characterized by prominent eyebrow ridges, a low forehead, a long, narrow skull. They were deep-chested, large-boned individuals with a powerful build. But none of these features are outside the natural realm of a normal human anatomy. In 2010, the genome of Neanderthal Man was sequenced, and guess what? It was a human race that had been isolated from the rest of the world, and all within the normal range of human variation. 1891, Java Man was found from a skull cap. A year later, and 50 feet away, a leg bone was found, and then later in another location, 3 teeth. Years later, it was found that the bones of Java Man actually belonged to a gibbon. 1912, Piltdown Man's lower jawbone was found and part of a skull, and the New York Times Herald, Darwin's theory is proven true. And another headline, skull found establishes human descent from apes. Many years later, 1953, it was found to be an orangutan jaw and human teeth that had been filed down and dyed to match the skull. 1922, Nebraska Man was reconstructed from a single tooth, and the London Illustrated News pictured him complete with the tooth's wife and the tooth's children and the tooth's domestic animals. Years later, it turned out to be an extinct pig's tooth. 1920s, a single tooth was found in China and named Peking Man. It was later discovered that Peking man's tooth came from the garbage dump. 1965. Some of you may remember. The Ascent of Man was published by Time Life Books. Now, back then, Time and Life magazine were really big. This spread was published. This is a fold-out, multi-page spread, 1965. It shows specimens that are created from jawbones, teeth, skull pieces, and fossilized scraps. No intact skeletons. It has them lined up as if marching in a parade, but no respectable scientist believes that this is the chain from monkey to man. It's not a chain at all. These are just different hominids, different types of monkey types, ape types, and then man types. And if you look clearly, I can see monkey, 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 and then we get man, 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 man. And that's what that is. Here's another good one. Winner right here. 1975, this is the current era, right? Well, kind of my current era. Lucy from Ethiopia was discovered. She was on display in the St. Louis Zoo. She's depicted as walking upright. She's got human hands, human feet, but an obvious ape-like skull. She's got her forefinger curled pensively under her chin, gazing off as if she were contemplating the mysteries of the universe and life. In 1982, Lucy turned out to be an extinct ape. Her knee bone, which caused people to think that she walked upright, had been found 200 feet lower and 1.5 miles away from the rest of her bones. Oh, and a year earlier also. All right, so let's look at some problems that ET has. One of the biggest ones right here, and we're going to talk about DNA in just a minute, but in order for evolution to work, DNA must mutate. That's the way they get one species changing into another. So a DNA mutation is a mistake. It's an error. Errors must occur in the DNA to change to another species. ET says given enough generations of mutations, a species will transition into another species. These mutations, though, must have a positive effect because remember, nature is only going to favor the most fit to survive. There's a big problem with this part of the ET theory, and that is, for the most part, mutations are harmful. In fact, most mutations are fatal and lead to extinction. An example of this type of mutation would be, say, an insect that becomes resistant to a bug spray. Yes, the insect has evolved. It has changed in its DNA. But there's also a loss of information in the DNA where the DNA was changed into something new. So, in most cases, the organism has lost some part of its natural functionality. Mutations, more often than not, lead to extinction, not becoming a more complex, evolved species. The fossil record disproves evolution theory. If evolution theory was true, we would expect to be able to see a chain of continuous evolution in the fossil record. But this is not what we find. What we find is different kinds of animals separated from other kinds of animals with no transitions in between. No fish turning into alligators, and no alligators turning into snakes, and no snakes turning into birds. There are no transitional fossils in the fossil record. So the fossil record disproves ET. Now this is Darwin's dilemma. If you can see the chart right there, this is a timeline. And when we start off on the left, we have no species. And there's a point in time where there's a huge spike. See the red line going up? There's a huge spike of life that appears in the Earth's crust. This happens in the Cambrian layer, which is one of the oldest layers of the Earth's crust. So all of a sudden we have a few little tiny simple forms of life, and then bam, out of nowhere, with no evolution, with no previous ancestors, almost all the forms of life that we see today sprang into the fossil record. Where's the previous forms? Where's the transition? Where's the slow millions and millions of years of moving from a single cell to a smaller animal, to a bigger animal, to a dinosaur? Where is it's not there. This is a huge dilemma for Darwin. And he even said, I understand that this is a huge problem for my theory. I just believe that given enough time, we'll find all those transitional fossils. It hasn't been found yet, Darwin. I'm sorry. Another problem is evolution theory is not happening now. We don't see any trans animals. There's no animals that you can point to say that is an animal in transition. That animal is evolving from one to another. There are no examples. There's no examples in the fossil record. There's no examples in the world today. E.T. has no record in the past. The fossil record is strikingly devoid of all intermediate or trans forms of animals. The links are all missing in the fossil record, just as they are in our world today. In fact, the whole chain is missing. There is not one animal that you can locate a chain of evolution for. With very few exceptions, all of the major organisms that we have today came into the fossil record abruptly, as if they were created. Another problem, E.T. is against the law. E.T. relies on the hope that nature is going to become more complex over time. However, what we observe by natural processes is naturally things in the world break down. They go from complex to simple. There's a law called the second law of thermodynamics, which says in a closed system, entropy will always increase, meaning disorder will always increase, meaning things break down, things become simpler. Nature just does not create things. Nature causes things to break down, to decay, to fall apart. Nature does not add complexity. And that's what's required by E.T., but it's against the law. Irreducible complexity. There are certain mechanisms in living structures that require all the pieces and parts to be there for any of that system to work. So all the pieces have to be there in the right place, in the right order. They all have to be working at the same time. So they could not come together a little piece at a time, because there would be no way for that whole system to work. They all have to be created and in place and working properly for any of the system to work. And that's called irreducible complexity. So here's what the atheists are left with. Those who deny a creator God have an explanation such as this. There was nothing, and then the entire universe of space and time and matter came out of an infinitely small speck, and it came out of nowhere. But they're positively sure that it wasn't caused by a creator God. And then another miracle happened. That speck blew up into the entire universe with all its complexity and chemistry and laws of physics, and it expanded faster than the speed of light, which is the speed limit of the universe, and nothing can go faster than that, but it did, they say, with billions of stars and billions of light years from one side of the universe to the other, and that distance is greater than anything could ever possibly travel. But they're positively sure that a creator God had nothing to do with it, and then after a long time, another miracle happened. Another little microscopic speck came to life all by itself, and they're certain that God didn't give it life because they're certain that there's no God. And then nature took over, and it took that little speck and created all the forms of life that we see today. And they're sure that God did not cause it because they are sure that there is no God. Well, that's a little far-fetched for me. We do not have time to talk about DNA. But let me just say that DNA is an amazing thing, and you have about 100 trillion cells in your body, and each cell has a nucleus, and in each nucleus are your 46 chromosomes, and your 46 chromosomes make up your entire DNA. And if we were to stretch it out here, It would be so small, but if we were to stretch it out, it would be about 6 feet tall. So DNA is a single molecule that's in every cell of your body. And here's a spoiler alert for another lesson that's coming up. That DNA in every cell of your body has your sex gene in it. So whether you think you're a man or not, your cells know, every cell in your body knows whether it's a male or a female. Every 100 trillion of your cells. That's part of your DNA. That's part of your genome. So that's in there. So you lose billions of cells every day. Right now, your body is copying DNA into thousands and thousands of new cells. Every time a cell is created, the DNA has to be copied from a good cell into this new cell. Or basically, the cell is split and the DNA is zipped right down the middle and split into and made 2 copies. It's an amazing process. It requires all kinds of chemical machines moving up and down the chain and splitting the chain and putting the chain back together and copying pieces of the chain. It is an amazing thing. And we know that intelligence comes from a source. So where's the intelligence that created the DNA? Where's the intelligence that put all the billions of letters in the right order in your DNA? Where's the intelligence that put it in the right order, in the right place, at the right time? This is a picture of DNA replication. We don't have time to go into it, but just look at that and marvel. That's amazing. You're doing that right now many, many, many thousands of times in your body right now. You're splitting your DNA genome and making it into 2 copies for a new cell. I'm cruising on through here so we can get finished on time. Faith in creationism is denied by evolution theory. In other words, evolution theory says your faith in creationism is not real. You're believing in something that's a myth. You're believing in something that's false. But yet, evolution theory requires its adherents to believe in a theory that can't be proven. It's never been proven. There's no proof of it. There's no science behind it. It's based upon suppositions. It's based upon guesses. It's not based upon true science. Let's hurry along and and look at the things that the Bible says about the Genesis creation story. The Bible says there was a beginning. The Bible says that God created the heavens and the earth. It says that the earth was a certain way and God has brought it into the current state that it's in. It says that God acted to bring the earth into the current condition that it's in. The Bible does not say that what the age of the earth is or what the age of the universe is. The Bible does not say that the creation events lasted over 6 24-hour day periods. We'll talk about that a little more in a minute. The Bible does not say that each creative period followed immediately after the other. The Bible doesn't say how long the creative periods are, and it doesn't say that God's commands in the creation were fulfilled instantaneously. All right, so the message of Genesis does tell the descendants of Adam about their origin and their relationship with their Creator. That's really what the story's about. The modern attacks on the book of Genesis have as their basis a wish to discredit the theological story of the Bible, to discredit the rest of the Bible, because if the beginning is a myth, why listen to the rest of the story? All right, now I got something for you here. We're going to go over the creation story real quick. Just a long lesson, and I'm cutting out as much as I'm cutting out a lot. Genesis is not a history lesson, a geography lesson, or a paleontology lesson, although it is factually accurate in all of those areas. The purpose of Genesis is to introduce man to God's plan, to tell us about Abraham and the Jewish race. For what? To bring us to the Messiah. Jesus is the central focus of all the Bible. This is the way the Bible starts in the Amplified Bible. In the beginning, God created from nothing the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and empty, and darkness was upon the face of the primeval ocean that covered the unformed earth. The Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. This verse tells us that God created everything. This phrase, heaven and earth, is what's called a merism. It means the same thing as when you say, I've searched high and low for something. It's given us the two extremes, and it's saying God created everything from heaven and earth. And everything in between, time, space, matter, energy. There is an indeterminable amount of time at this point. We don't know how long the delay was between this and the beginning of the creation story. As we read, God begins to speak and to create and to recreate and to make. So we don't know the amount of time here. We're not given the amount of time. There's no way that we can know and speculate. There's no digging in the earth that can tell us this. There's no fossil that can give us this information. So the earth was without form and void. And now, if you've ever wondered what the earth looked like after Genesis 2, I have great news for you, because I actually have a slide that shows you beyond a shadow of a doubt exactly what the earth looked like at this point. And here it is. Ready? There you go. The earth is covered in a cloud so thick that it is dark. Now, we know that Saturn, Jupiter, Neptune, and Uranus are covered with clouds. Do you know that we have never seen the surface of those 4 planets? We've never seen the surface of those planets. They're covered in such a thick, oppressive, poisonous atmosphere, and we've never been able to penetrate it. We've never seen the surface. We don't even know if Jupiter and Saturn have surfaces. They might just be a ball of gas. So it's certainly conceivable to think that when God created the earth and it was without form and void, that it was in a similar situation. It's dark, there is no light. And then God said, let there be light. And the protostar, which was the sun, crossed into the barrier beyond 12 million degrees, and its hydrogen began to fuse into helium, and the sun ignited. And the fusion furnace that powers the sun and gives us our light began to shine, and it shone through that canopy that was covering the earth. There was no light prior to the sun, because the sun is our only light. Now, there might have been stars, because the sun is a star, but our star that gives us heat and light was not burning at that time. God formed it, but it was a protostar. It had not yet ignited. It had its mass, but it was not above 12 million degrees. It wasn't burning yet. The sun began to ignite. There was light. God saw the light. He said it was good. He distinguished the light and the darkness. And then there was a period of time, and we don't know how long it lasted. But the next time God did something, He said again, let there be an expanse and separate the waters above from the waters below. And there you go. We got an atmosphere. We can't see outside our atmosphere, but there's light coming through from the sun, and there's water covering the earth, and it looked probably something like this. God created the atmosphere and the water cycle. We don't know how long that lasted. We don't know how long it was there. The Bible says the Spirit of God is moving. God was here. We don't know what processes were happening. But there came another point in time where God spoke again. And He said, let the waters be gathered together in one place, in a standing pool, and let the dry land appear. And there it was. We don't know how long that took. Maybe it was a poof, or maybe it took millions of years for that land to creep up and the water to recede. God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters He called seas. He saw it was good. He sustained it. He said, let the grass grow and sprout. Let it yield seed. Let the fruit trees come out. And it was so. There was grass. Now maybe it poofed. I'm using that word a lot, poof. Maybe the grass poofed out, or maybe it took a long time to grow. We don't know. But there was the grass, and it's being powered by the sun, but we hadn't seen the sun yet, right? It's being powered by the sun. Sun's coming through the atmosphere, but it's still cloudy. We can't see out. Could be. We don't even know what the atmosphere was like. We don't know the condition of the earth at this time. But there's the grass. And then God said, let there be light bearers in the expanse of the heavens. Let them be useful for signs and seasons and days and years, and let them provide light upon the earth. And there it was. The atmosphere cleared. There's the sun that's been lighting the day and the night, and now we can see it. Just as He commanded, God made the two lights to rule the day and the night. He made the stars also, and He affirmed it, and He said it was good. And we don't know how long that lasted. Could have lasted millions of years. It could have been a lot of processes. Could have taken a lot of time for the atmosphere to get right and the chemistry to get right in the water. The waters could have been poisonous for a long time. We don't know. We do know that on other planets, though, their conditions are hostile to life. We've never found a planet where our life could exist there. All the other planets, all the other bodies that we've seen, they're hostile to life. And so probably Earth was like that as well. After an undetermined period of time, God said, let the water swarm abundantly and produce living creatures, and let birds soar in the air above. And at some point in time, there was birds. And they were flying in the open expanse. And God created great sea creatures, every living creature that moves, and the water swarmed, and every bird. God saw that it was good. God sustained it. He said, be fruitful and multiply. After an undetermined period of time, God said again, let the earth bring forth creatures, cattle, creeping thing, beasts of the earth. God made it. We don't know how it happened. We don't know how God did it, but somehow it happened. God said, let us make man in our image according to our likeness. Let them rule over all the beasts and the fish and the birds and have dominion. And at some point in time, God made human beings. And He blessed them. He said, be fruitful and multiply. The seventh day, God rested. We really cruised through that. But historical events cannot be checked scientifically in the past. All the evidence that we have comes from the past. We can make educated guesses about the past. We can look at rocks. We can look at fossils. We can't directly test anything because we can't repeat the past. Furthermore, creationists and evolutionists are using the same facts, but they're looking at it with two different ideas, and of course they're going to come up with two different theories of the past and how we got to where we are today. We can draw conclusions. We use our worldview. That is our most basic understandings of beliefs. But since creationists and evolutionists start with different beliefs, they're interpreting these facts to mean two different things. Facts don't speak for themselves. Facts are interpreted, and we decide what the facts actually say. If macroevolution did happen, that is one species turning into another, if it did, it was surely a miracle of God. And it was not nature that did it, and we have no evidence of it. So we can't definitively say that something in the past did or did not happen. If we're not there to observe it, we can't say with confidence it did or did not happen. But we just don't have evidence of one species changing into another species. Don't have any evidence. Both the books of nature and Scripture that God has given us are subject to our human interpretation. Creationism and natural evolution require faith. Those who reject creationism reject it on the same grounds that they should also reject evolution. That is, you're believing in something that you can't prove. And creationism can't be proven. Evolution theory can't be proven. The Bible, though, is clear. God is the creator and maker. Any interpretation of science that removes God is incompatible with Scripture, and it's non-scientific because science cannot touch God. Science can only touch nature. God is capable of creating through instantaneous supernatural acts and also capable of designing processes that take millions of years to work themselves out. When we accept that God is able to make His creation any way that He chose to make it, all the scientific problems go away. We don't have problems with missing links, or mutations that add complexity, or transitional fossils, or the Cambrian explosion, or irreducible complexity, or DNA, when we simply believe the two books that God has given us. Thank you. God bless you.